Hello and welcome to Backstage Buzz, where we'll discuss Insert Coin, an exhibit which features 15 playable arcade games that help tell the story of Midway, allowing visitors to learn about this iconic company while enjoying some of their most celebrated creations. Today, our special guest is Ethan Johnson, an independent researcher and writer. Welcome, Ethan.
Thank you very much.
So this is like when Justin told me we were doing the show, I was like, we're putting video games in the art museum. So can you explain a little bit about the history of Midway and video games and all of that?
So Midway is a Chicago company, technically several Chicago companies, but we don't go there. Okay. But they made a lot of the both pinball and arcade video games that people have played all across the country. And so it's kind of a point of pride that Midway is a local
as a local company.
Yeah.
So what's one of the games that we might all know and love?
Mortal Kombat, NBA Jam, NFL Blitz for the sports fans.
Wow.
Lots of stuff.
All of that started here in Chicago. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's very interesting, but where does the art part come in?
Midway had a very distinctive style. You might call it pop art, but it was very inspired by comic books and 80s action movies and all that kind of thing. You know, it's kind of machismo in a lot of ways, but there's a little bit of depth to it. And the art of the Midway games it's iconic in its own way.
So all the people who know and love these games are going to recognize some of the images when they come to the show.
Yeah, there's some very iconic art in the cabinets and even just the pixel art in the games. Over time, like, pixel art has been recognized as like a legitimate form of art, even though, you know, it's a little bit chunky in some places. But it is something that a lot of people have nostalgia for, and it has a legitimate craft to it as well.
Oh, absolutely. So how many of these sort of artists that work on these video games, and now when you think about, those were more arcade games. Mm-hmm. Now we have video games. Those are heavily animated, right? We're really talking artists, right? That's its own art form almost, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, you used to count the amount of images you could actually put in the game. Oh. And yeah, you didn't have enough memory to put in all the things that you wanted to do.
Okay, like Pac-Man.
Yeah, I mean, they were, right? Yeah, I mean, that's two things.
Yeah.
And yeah, nowadays you have like 200 artists working on one of the top tier games.
Really? Mm-hmm. Now, do you do any of the work with these artists? Or tell us your role in this show?
I'm the curatorial assistant. I do the research. Mm-hmm. That's kind of my main thing I do, both with this and with Chicago Game Space, who's collaborating with the Cleve Carney Museum to put this all together. So I make sure the facts are right. I contact people where I can, and give a bit of historic legitimacy to the exhibit.
Now, isn't there a movie about this? Tell us about the movie.
The Insert Coin was a documentary made by Josh Sway, who is one of the curators of this exhibit.
Okay.
It was released in 2020. He actually worked at Midway, so he had a lot of direct access to the people and to lots of very cool footage, which is going to be featured in the exhibit. It is a very good documentary. It's on several different streaming services and on physicals as well. And it's been available for a little bit.
So many students I know love video games, right? They're obsessed with the video games. And then people say, well, why don't you, go into learning how to do video games? Don't they have to be more of a programmer or more of an artist? How does that work in the video game business?
The technical side of video games, nowadays you're not counting every single little drop of color that you put in there. But there is always a technical aspect to it, which is why a lot of people who are traditional artists, they can't make that jump to 3D, because 3D does require you understanding kind of math and how motion kind of flows. So there is a little bit of a technical element, but if you are an artist, you can apply your skills to video games as well.
That's so interesting. But then they need somebody to like a programmer to make the game part work, right? And the video part work.
It's a multidisciplinary field. There's designers, programmers, artists, sound people. It's not as simple as doing something like art. It's kind of if you were working directly with the people who made the canvas.
Interesting. So how did you get into this?
Oh, it's a long story. We don't go into it all here, but I was just very fascinated by all this because I was actually going to Columbia College for game design.
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I started looking into the past and, all these people that were around just for my own interest. And over time, I started talking to people, and I just kind of became an independent expert in a way.
What a fun thing to be the expert on. So tell us a little bit more about what we might see in the show.
We are going to have many playable games for people to be able to walk up to. We're also going to have documents from the creation of the games. We're going to have few interactive exhibits, and also just telling the whole story with little wall graphics and explanatory text that will help make the games make more sense in their time period.
Because these are, would you call them vintage games?
Vintage, retro, they're cultural artifacts, I think is the best way to say it. Just like, a shirt from the 80s is a cultural artifact.
Exactly. Well, I'll tell you, when Justin and I were talking about how do we do this, what we decided was people are going to have to buy a ticket to come to the show, and they can play the games. They can actually play the games. And we didn't put a timer on anybody, but we said people are going to have to be aware that other people will want to play, and based on how many people are in the room or how long people can stay on a particular game. But if you were to say, age-wise, if a family wanted to come, what age range would you suggest would be appropriate?
There are a couple games that have content which some people may or may not, find entirely appropriate for their kids.
Okay.
Though we have at Chicago Game Space have had a lot of kids who love stuff like Mortal Kombat.
Right.
Because it's just fun. It's goofy. It's not something that they see as objectionable, and the parents as well. So I think kids will love it because there's stuff like driving games. They love getting their hands on the wheel.
Fun.
And people who are older will remember the games and want to understand a bit more about the time and place that they came out in.
That sounds fantastic. Thank you so much for coming out and sharing all about this fantastic story. And I'm really looking forward to Insert Coin.
Thanks so much.
Be sure to visit Insert Coin at the Cleve Carney Museum of Art through February. For tickets, visit atthemac.org. We look forward to seeing you at the MAC and next time on Backstage Buzz.